Okay, well, I had just a little bit left to do at the end of chapter 4, and I really do hope that Liz comes, or I'm sorry, I'm the end of chapter 3, and Liz is doing chapter 4. So last week we got through most of the episode with the at the threshing floor, basically where Ruth essentially requests Boaz to marry her. And asks him to spread his wing over her, although it may be translated sometimes cloak. And we talked a little bit about the Eshat Hayil, the worthy woman, that expression which occurs in Proverbs 31. Boaz also has, hey, George. Boaz also is referred to with the masculine of that earlier in chapter 2. But we didn't really get to the very end of the chapter. So if somebody could read in chapter 3, verses 14 until the end of the chapter. Can somebody do that, please?
I'll do it. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before one person could recognize another. For he said, "It must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor." And then he said, "Bring the cloak you are wearing and hold it out." And she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her back, and then she went into the city. She came to her mother-in-law, who said, "How did things go with you, my daughter?" And then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said, 'Do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" She replied, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today."
Thank you. Okay, so a couple of points that I'll just kind of throw out on this. Again, I don't believe that Ruth and Boaz consummated their relationship on the threshing floor. I think that would be very out of character for them. I think this is sort of the reverse of Lot's daughters deceiving him and getting him to father children with them in the book of Genesis. This is, I think, a redeemed episode of that. But Ruth still would be very vulnerable both to danger if she left the threshing floor alone in the middle of the night, and if people knew that she had been there. So Boaz is always the gentleman, and he will hide her there, keep her there in the threshing floor with him through the night, and send her home early in the morning before anybody can recognize her, protecting her reputation, protecting her in every way. And then, of course, there's the point about the barley. And Boaz tells Ruth, "You must not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed." Why does he say that? What does that mean? Or does that refer back to anything earlier in the book? Mom, are you? Oh, sorry.
No one's going to answer.
Okay.
Now, how's this?
Okay. It does refer to something back earlier. Yeah. When Naomi returns to Bethlehem from Moab, she says specifically, "I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty." And she tells people, "Don't call me Naomi anymore," which is pleasant, but Mara, which is bitter. So that's another instance, I think, where the language, we're supposed to remember that Naomi felt that she was full when she went out, empty coming back, and now God is going to fill her up again. There's some debate about how much barley she actually got, depending on what kind of, how you interpret, I guess, the Hebrew. But there was kind of a witty comment where this one man, or the author of the Anchor Bible, mentioned that some people have her carrying as much as 100 pounds of grain And he said, we do not need to add to her virtues that of superhuman strength. He thought it was more like 30 pounds. So, and my translation actually does say he put it on her back, but I read another person who mentioned that she might have carried this in front of her and it would look almost like she was pregnant. And of course, I think there is some symbolism here too, in that Naomi went out full with her sons and her husband, came back empty, and Boaz is the agent of the Lord filling their emptiness. And literally he gives grain, he gives a generous present to Ruth at this time. And the metaphor of the seed, his seed is actually going to raise up an heir for Elimelech's household. And the very last verse, again, just sort of emphasizes another one of Boaz's virtues, which is he's not going to dilly-dally around about this issue. He is going to settle the matter today in the gate. He's going to, and actually he's sworn that to Ruth as well. And again, his politeness, his sort of chivalry almost. He says, yes, I'm your redeemer, but there's someone who has a higher right than I do. And he's so polite, he's not even going to bump that person out of the way. So just another example of his good character. Does anybody have anything else to say on those points? Or on anything of chapter 3?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, verse 16. I need John's help on this. My translation says that that Naomi said to Ruth, "How did you fare, my daughter?" And I think in the Hebrew text it doesn't say that. It says, "Mi ata," who you? In other words, are you Mrs. Boaz?
Or Miss Ruth.
Yeah.
You are correct that that's what the Hebrew says. Whether it's incorrect or has other implications, that's why we have translators, right?
Did we get an understanding of what was the story on uncovering feet?
Well, we tried last week. Again, I sort of went out on a limb and argued that I don't think that they consummated their relationship there on the threshing floor. I think that would have been out of character for both of the people, for both Ruth and Boaz. But there seem to be some plays on words in there. I mean, feet can be genitals. So, I think the way I learned it as a little girl is that she goes and lays down sort of crossways at his feet. My grandfather used to talk about sleeping across the foot of his sister's beds when they didn't have enough beds for all the children. And he just laid crossways on the end of the bed like that. But there is I think Ruth is asking him in every way that she can, apart from just flat out saying, please marry me. She is indicating to him that she wants him to redeem land, and she also wants marriage from him.
So sort of like tipping her hat.
In a way, sending a signal. We talked about too that certainly during the daytime in the field, she can't, kind of go over to Boaz and wink, wink. And, that would have been completely out of character. And she had no man to arrange a marriage for her. So I think that's why she had to catch Boaz when he would be alone.
And it does seem as though he's getting it because he's saying, you're coming to an old man instead of, a young person. Wow. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure he was kind of taken back with like, wow, okay, I get it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I feel like both Ruth and Boaz look beyond the outward appearances. I mean, that's not to say that they were both beautiful, or we just don't know. But Ruth chooses a husband based on character, apparently, and he does that as well.
I noticed in 4, it brings up again that her youth.
Yes, the young woman.
So it's another indication that there must have been a realization of a difference between their ages, but Ruth was wanting to do the kinsman thing. That's why Ruth sent her, because, I mean, why Naomi sent her was because she wanted to do the kinsman thing, so.
Mm-hmm.
Would it have been very common for women to pursue the men in that culture at all?
I don't think so.
I would say people are people, and in the subtle ways that they could, absolutely. Women did have, I mean, if you think of the story of Isaac and Rebecca, Rebecca is pictured as an incredibly industrious woman in the same way that Ruth is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons that's the criteria Abraham's servant, enunciates. If I find this woman, God, the woman who asked to water my camels and all that, my animals, he didn't have camels, I know it's the woman. When it comes down to it, she's given a choice, for instance, as to whether she goes back or not. She gets to give her permission. And I suspect that in a lot of these situations, even though there are formal structures of men arranging things, that as in most situations, there's a lot of what we would call soft power, or soft power would be a good term. And so I suspect there's a lot more of that kind of, the marriage pool is pretty small to start with, but I assume that there's a lot more of that kind of stuff going on, just as, in the ways that it can happen.
Boaz has, I mean, this didn't come out of the blue. Boaz has already shown a lot of interest in her.
That's true. He's been very kind to her, although if they were very much different in age, how would that might not necessarily translate to "I want to marry you." But yeah, you're right from the beginning.
I mean, she must have known he was very well disposed toward her, before she went to the threshing floor.
Mm-hmm.
This was not just like a bolt out of the blue.
George, there was one interesting point that I found in a commentary, rabbinic tradition, or Mishnah, I guess. One sort of elaboration on the text. It's not scripture, but their commentary, or their filling in the details, said that as Ruth and Naomi came into town, Boaz's wife was being carried out to be buried. And there's this comment, out with the old and in with the new. And then there's also a tradition that Boaz was 85 years old and died on his wedding night. But again, we don't know any of that, obviously. So
it's interesting to me that there's no mention here of one of them being in love with the other. So romantic love, is not an issue here. This is a win-win situation for both of them. Boaz gets Ruth's property. Ruth gets Boaz's protection. Good, rational approach to marriage.
mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't assume thereby that there's no kind of that there's not necessarily some kind of emotional attraction as well. It's clearly not explicitly stated anywhere, but I wouldn't totally dismiss the idea. We do have it.
Jacob and Rachel.
I was going to say, we have it there, and we have it in a few other stories too. So it's not as if it's an unknown concept.
And that kind of love never seems to turn out so well. Perhaps. I mean, there's Jacob and And Rachel, but well, does anybody know?
I have not seen hide nor hair of the Bankses. They haven't tried to get in, and they haven't sent me an email. They haven't called me. They haven't texted me. So I have no idea what's happening with them. So I don't know if we want to just read chapter 4 or what we want to do. But let me double check, but I have not heard, I've not gotten any communication from them whatsoever. I hope they haven't lost another tree and lost all their power again. But I don't know what's happened.
We'll read first 6 verses.
Well, I didn't prepare chapter 4 exactly, but let's go ahead and read into it, and we can just kind of all make comments. So I'll read the first 6 verses here. So this is the morning after the threshing floor. No sooner had Boaz gone up to the gate and sat down there than the next of kin of whom Boaz had spoken came passing by. So Boaz said, "Come over, friend, sit down here." And he went over and sat down. Then Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. He then said to the next of kin, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me so that I may know, for there is no one prior to you to redeem it, and I come after you." So he said, "I will redeem it." Then Boaz said, "The day you acquire the field from the hand of Naomi, you are also acquiring Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance." At this, the next of kin said, "I cannot redeem it for myself without damaging my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it." I'll just start off by saying there's several instances in the book where there is a very fortuitous coincidence. And here's another example of that in the very first verse. No sooner had Boaz gone up to the gate than he saw the man that he was looking for to discuss this business deal with. And clearly, that, as I understand it, the gate, the gate of the city was basically also the courtroom and the place where business was transacted and legal matters were settled. Fortunately, both of the parties were there that day.
John, question for you on how did this man think that marrying Ruth how would marrying Ruth damage his inheritance?
I mean, he seems to so quickly, as soon as he finds out Ruth is part of the bargain, you know, he's totally ready to throw up his hands and say it's all yours. That does seem odd that it would damage his estate or endanger his estate.
First thing I'd say is, you know, everything I know about it that I know. This is a singular story. We don't have this confluence of circumstances anywhere else. What's said here about the whole Leverett thing, about the wife part of it, isn't exactly what happens in the Pentateuch, which is where it's about brothers, not necessarily like, okay, there are no more brothers left. Who's the next relative in line? And we never have this connection between property and the marriage of a wife. So one of two things is happening. Either it's a set of customs specific to one kind of period of time that we just don't have a record of, or it's really convenient. From a literary point of view, it's really convenient.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And so one might argue from a literary point of view that it's everybody watches, well, not everybody, a lot of people watch movies and then find the logical flaw. Well, this never would have happened. John and Tom, I'm sure, have trouble watching anything that has to do with law and law court settings because you say that would never happen in a law court. And so it's possible that what we have here, it's possible that what we have here is a set of customs that were kind of unique that never get written down in this kind of a way. And it's also possible that you have a very creative storyteller who needs a convenient device in the storytelling to make it work.
I thought of something too, which is Boaz knows what a worthy woman Ruth is, but maybe this other kinsman doesn't, even though Boaz says everyone knows how good you've been to Naomi.
I think he has his
It's possible that this kinsman doesn't know her.
I think
Well,
he's got his eye on someone else, and he knows his future father-in-law would not approve of there being some foreigner in the family, so therefore he could never have the bride he really wants.
If he marries Ruth.
Or the piece of land that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
The other possibility is, the kinsman is paying the redemption price, but then if it turns out that he's paying a redemption price, but then if they have a child, that the child gets that land rather than the kinsman's own family, that may be where he's coming from on damaging his inheritance rights. So he's paying money out and getting nothing for it other than a wife and somebody else's child in essence. So,
Well, speaking as somebody who tries to keep money equal between a son and a daughter, and we find that pretty hard at times, I would guess that it would be difficult for the kinsman to keep all of his own money and his own personal wealth carefully segregated from this land and the wealth that's going to be inherited by the children that they have. I could just see that'd be very difficult to keep track of all of that and to try to keep it carefully segregated.
Well, did we say earlier that we suspect he already had a wife? Boaz.
A
Yeah.
respectable Jewish man would have
No,
been.
I'm not talking about Boaz. I'm talking about the Redeemer. The other, yeah.
The near kinsman.
The near kinsman that he went
The other next of kin. I would assume so.
And so that's where I wonder, kind of like what George was saying, but maybe he already has a father-in-law. He already has a wife and a father-in-law, and therefore it would just really mess things up, with them, or they would not be happy at all, especially maybe the fact that she is a Moabite woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it possible that it should be translated, if I do this, my current wife will kill me?
Yeah.
Perhaps so.
The difference between what it says and what it means.
Or maybe my
Liz.
family, like Liz has found us. So.
Yes, we just read the first 6 verses, so over to you.
Have you thoroughly discussed them?
I'm eager to
If you
talk
have
about
more
the
additional
sandals.
information,
All right, I'm ready to talk about sandals. I'm wearing them, in fact. Let's see. Got 7 through
12.
yeah, 7 through 12 is about sandals. And let's see. Have you read it? Or
No.
okay. All right. So 7, let's divide it up. 7 is a narrator. The kinsman is 8. And and just 8, and then 9 and 10 is Boaz. 11 and 12, we all get to read. It's a chorus. Tom, you were a good Boaz last time. Does anybody want to be the unnamed kinsman and read verse 8?
I do.
Oh, Ted, I had you in mind. Good. I just thought your acting abilities would be good for that. And then narrator, I'll be the narrator and get us started. And then 11 and 12, I think is typically thought of as men, but I got to thinking that those Proverbs 31 women would be at the gate selling their products. So I'd like everybody to do 11 and 12. Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things. A man plucked off his shoes and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz,
buy it yourself.
So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people,
today you are witnesses that I have acquired from the hand of Naomi and all that belong to Elimelech and all that belong to Chilion and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth, the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, to be my wife, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance, in order that the name of the dead may not be cut off from his kindred and from the gate of his native place. Today you are witnesses.
and all the people that were in the gate and the elders said in their own translations, we are witnesses.
May
The
the
Lord
Make the woman
who is
coming
come
out of your house
house
like Rachel and Leah,
who together
build
the
the
house
the
of
house
Israel.
of
Israel, and
May
do
May
thou
you act
worthy
worthy
in
in Ephrathah,
Ephrathah,
and be
and
renowned
also a
in
name in
Bethlehem.
Bethlehem.
And may your
and
house
let
show
that
forth
house
the
be like
Lord
the house of
Perez,
Perez,
by this young woman.
Lord,
there
Let
unto
your house be like the house of
because of the
Perez,
offering that
Lord,
the Lord
Tamar
would
bore to
give
Judah.
by
thee
this
of this young
woman.
woman. Well, I think that's exactly how it sounded. Well, let's take a look at Deuteronomy 25, 7 through 10, where we see this sandal thing. Deuteronomy 25, 7 through 10. Would someone out of the great chorus please read that?
I will read it.
Thank you.
But if the man has no desire to marry his brother's widow, then his brother's widow shall go up to the elders at the gate and say, my husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his town shall summon him and speak to him. If he persists, saying, I have no desire to marry her, then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sandal off his foot, spit at his face, and declare, this is what is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. Throughout Israel, his family shall be known as the house of him whose sandal was pulled off.
Mine says the family of the unsandaled.
Well,
It's another case of exposing feet here.
Yeah.
yeah. I was having trouble. I think that feet thing is important. I was having some trouble navigating in the Dead Sea, and some men had taken a hold of my arms and helped me get in further, but I still couldn't. And I asked them to take a hold of my feet, and they refused. And I think I really offended them or asked them to do something offensive. You know, later in learning more about that culture, I thought, whoops. So, Ted, did you have something you wanted to say about what was going on?
Just that we have the stripping of clothing away from the feet here. The word feet and foot is not used, but it's just an interesting parallel.
The uncovering?
Yes.
Yeah, that we've been seeing, the covering and the uncovering, and here we are uncovering. It is a good parallel. It just keeps going, and the storytelling, I just thinks with that bit of repetition just draws you in further and further.
Sounds to me like she pulled his pants down in public.
I guess that it might be about something like that.
But notice that even though we have sandals here and in Deuteronomy, the function of the sandal is different.
Yeah.
In Deuteronomy, it is a rebuke. It's a
shaming.
It's a slap in the face. And of
Yeah.
course, there's no spitting going on here. But in Ruth, this is confirming a transaction. I mean, that's the phrase that's used. And
Yeah.
so,
And he
Ruth-
does it
Ruth isn't even-
voluntarily.
Yeah. Ruth is not there in Ruth.
and we want to see Ruth spit. I mean, come on.
She is too much of a lady to spit.
I assume that the sandal in the story in Ruth is kept by the other person.
Doesn't say.
It seems like it's kind of pointless if he just hands him his sandal and then he hands it right back.
Do you really want to keep his sandal?
I do if it's evidence of my ownership.
It just strikes me as a little bit odd here because, when you think of the Middle East and you think of showing shoes and the bottom of your foot, and it's a shameful sort of thing. But there doesn't seem to be any of that connotation here. This seems to be sort of a symbolic ritual act.
And the difference is Boaz is there as opposed to Deuteronomy. He's really the actor at this point. And instead of it being centered on the shame of the one who would not do it, you have Boaz taking the action himself. That seems to speak well of Boaz. It would seem to me, but he's at this point he's the one acting. And in the Deuteronomy portion, it's the woman that acts.
Yeah.
But Ruth doesn't at all.
Oh, Ruth's done. Ruth and
Yeah.
Naomi don't talk again. They're just sitting back at home waiting.
It doesn't it seem like from verse 7 that that this is harking back to an ancient custom that's not any longer practiced, or at least not practiced like this?
You know, I was looking for that verse, thank you, and I could not find it. It was, it's kind of a clue that this was being told a long time later.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Yeah, when these customs were either not being practiced or being practiced differently.
yeah, this is an old story being told.
And in the transaction, the land isn't mentioned in Deuteronomy. The land makes a difference here for some reason.
The land always makes a difference.
Yep.
You know, I wondered if Ruth, that night she spent on the threshing floor, started talking about the land and saying, you know, it's level, it's got clover growing on it. You know, because I wondered why did Naomi say it'll be done today after she heard everything that Ruth had said that had transpired? I don't. Was it she knew Boaz very well? Did she know Boaz couldn't spend a night on the threshing floor without having sex? Did she know that Boaz wanted to protect Ruth? Did she know that Ruth had talked about the land? I don't, you know, there are just so many questions about why did Naomi say, and you may have gone over this, but I just, you know, I grew up in a church that said, where the Bible speaks, we speak, where the Bible is silent, we are silent, but I could never do it. No, it's just.
Where the Bible is silent, we speculate.
Yeah, you bet.
We legislate.
Yeah.
That's a good one, Meg.
And you just wonder, you know, with land, they say, what are the three most valuable things about land? Location, location, location are the three. And in Bethlehem, location of land still yet is extremely important. You just can't help but wonder, where is this particular land that it got so much attention? But you don't have to
We're
travel.
about out of time. We're going to die real quick here. It's been great. We're going to do the rest of week 4 next week, and then I will talk to Mark and make sure Mark is on board for the week after that. So it's been great, and we will see you all next week.
Okay, thanks.
See ya.
Thanks.
Bye.